Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
I'm Millie Weaver, and I'll be taking you guys through the news tonight. Well, the big news today was when a 66-year-old liberal lunatic went to the GOP's baseball practice in Virginia and decided to go on a shooting rampage. That's right. He had the intention to massively assassinate numerous GOP members, and he would have been successful had it not been for this private security detail of Steve Scalise. Now, what's interesting here is that Senator Rand Paul was even there. I mean, we had numerous senators, congressmen, representatives all there. They witnessed this. They were definitely scared. You could tell it in the way they were talking about it. But what's interesting here is this man, James T. Hodgkinson. Now, of course, as soon as everybody finds out who this shooter is, they immediately start to look into this person. And it turns out that this guy was a Bernie Sanders supporting leftist. Now, Bernie Sanders did come out and address that when that went around in the media, and he did actually speak out against this type of violence. It's not okay to go on a shooting rampage because you ideologically disagree with someone. I mean, my gosh. Turns out that this shooter was also a huge fan of Rachel Maddow. Wow, what a surprise. He was also a viewer of the John Oliver Show and the Daily Show. So he was a partaker in the leftist media. And it's no wonder when you've seen these celebrities and these people all coming out, speaking out and speaking out against President Trump. Now, if we do a little bit of a flashback here, Tim Kaine, not too long ago, had actually spoken and said that people needed to fight in the streets in resistance to President Trump. And now here you see we have GOP members that were shot. I mean, badly injured. It could have been so much worse. There could have been a massive tragedy here where we saw a lot of people dead. But thank goodness that some people were carrying guns. And if you're wondering why more people were not carrying guns, more of these representatives weren't, it's because of the strict gun laws where they live. The majority of them live in D.C., and therefore they cannot have guns in D.C. But what's interesting is we had even seen Loretta Lynch, who had called for progressives to march, bleed, and die in resistance to President Trump. So we've had some pretty radical leftists out there calling for violence. So is it any wonder that now we're seeing people going and shooting up representatives? I mean, this is ridiculous, guys. We're seeing people die. I mean, thank goodness that nobody died during this, but it was a close call. We're lucky that that bullet happened to hit Representative Scalise in the hip and not somewhere else where it could have been fatal. It was a serious, serious injury. Now, what's also interesting is that this attack was most definitely inspired by the media. I mean, the media has been perpetuating this myth, this idea that Trump has been colluding with the Russians, that Trump is comparable to Hitler. So it's seriously no wonder that you see these leftists out there, you know, going up and trying to shoot someone and kill someone. They actually believe it's that serious that they need to go and kill somebody urgently to try and, you know, stop this Hitler regime from happening. My goodness, it's not anything like this. It's called propaganda. It's called being misled. Now, what's interesting here is leftists were quick to then criticize the GOP because they know that the GOP, they are supporters of the NRA. So some of these tweets were, Steve Scalise has A+ NRA rating. Avid gun supporter. Hope he appreciates this display of Second Amendment rights. So we have these leftists that are just being so cold. They don't even care. They're going to start mocking these people that were shot, that were terrified. But in reality, Rand Paul was interviewed and he witnessed it, and he said, if it had not been for a gun, the fact that Capitol Police prevented this massacre, if none of them had had guns there, then this gunman, this assailant, would have just had open play. I mean, the guy came with a semi-automatic rifle, and he had tons of reload of ammo, and he could have done serious damage. Now, this is kind of interesting here. This Virginia governor claims he came out and did a press conference after all of this, and of course, he's a Democrat. But what's kind of funny here is he claimed that 93 million Americans die from guns every day. Well, I'm wondering if he's using Common Core math to derive that figure there, because given that there's 300 and something million Americans, that would not make sense to have 93 million Americans die every day. So let's go ahead and roll this clip because it's pretty funny.
Do you think anything more needs to do to protect politicians?
Well, let me say this. I think we need to do more to protect all of our citizens. I have long advocated, this is not what today is about, but there are too many guns on the street. We lose 93 million Americans a day to gun violence. I mean, I've long talked about this. Background check, shutting down gun show loopholes. That's not for today's discussion, but it's not just about politicians.
Governor, can you
we worry about this every day for all of our citizens.
Now, this was Governor Terry McAuliffe, and he was the one who said this, which is pretty funny. It's a little bit of a blooper, but that's completely exaggerated, obviously. Well, what's interesting also is I wanted to read this quick quote from Rand Paul. He says, "I can tell you that I think with absolute certainty nobody would have survived without the Capitol Hill police. They saved everyone's life, incredibly brave, and they deserve everyone's praise." So without these brave heroes that had firearms, we could have seen Rand Paul dead. A lot of these other representatives dead. Steve Scalise dead. I mean, that is just absolutely shocking and mind-boggling. There was so much crossfire that was going on. You could hear it was just bang, 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 nonstop gunfire going on. This guy came with the intention to wipe out these politicians, essentially. Now, what's interesting is that CNN tried to justify the violence against these Republicans. It was kind of interesting. Host Wolf Blitzer was interviewing this gunman's friend, and this friend says that, the gunman was not evil. He just was sick and tired of the politics. Well, that's ridiculous. Why didn't Wolf Blitzer speak out and say, no, give me a break. You have to be evil in order to go out there with the intention to kill people, to mow people down, to traumatize families. I mean, for every person you see out there, you can imagine they all have families. A lot of them have children. It's completely wrong. It doesn't matter if somebody disagrees with you ideologically. Now, what's interesting here is that now GOP lawmakers are calling for Congress members to have concealed carry licenses and the ability to carry in D.C. A lot of them work in D.C. They live in D.C. or not necessarily live in D.C., but a lot of them work in D.C. and they have to be in D.C. And it is a major risk for them to be going there. They are public figures. They receive death threats in the mail or over social media, or maybe even in person. So they should be able to have a concealed carry. And this was Republican Representative Barry Loudermilk, who's been the person who's really been calling for this and for lawmakers to be able to conceal carry firearms in the nation's capital, because the only reason why this assailant was stopped was because Scalise had private security there that were carrying, and usually like somebody like Rand Paul or a lot of these other GOP members, they don't typically have private security on them. But because Scalise is a higher ranking member of the GOP, he typically did. So what they're saying is if it had not been for Scalise, there would have been a lot more deaths and a lot more carnage. Well, There's really so much here, guys, but just remember the mainstream media has been spinning this. They've been perpetuating this violence against Trump, the violence against Trump supporters, violence against Republicans, GOP members. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to escalate because how many people do you see, Democrats out there calling for this to stop, for this violence to stop? I haven't been seeing it at all on social media. It's pretty disturbing that we're not seeing that. But just remember, Infowars is still having this $200,000 in cash prizes for the Operation Expose Terrorist Media and Kathy Griffin. So make sure you go and get your CNN is ISIS t-shirts. Go out there in front of these mainstream media perpetuators of propaganda and photobomb them. Go out there and show them that, you know, people know that they're fake. People know that it's fraud. But unfortunately, not enough people do. And people believe their hysteria that they perpetuate. And then you have mass shootings.
I want to tell you about some of the products at InfowarsStore.com. We are under constant attack. You know it by now from the mainstream media. They're trying to attack us on every level. Now with the YouTube scandal, they're demonetizing our channels, which again takes a huge chunk out of our income, which is why we always appreciate and rely on you getting the products, because that's how we stay afloat. They can't get to us that way. They can't pressure you to not buy the products. They don't have that power. And that's why you're the key to this entire operation. We have Super Blue Fluoride Free Toothpaste, bubblegum flavor just arrived at InfowarsStore.com. This is by listener request. Bubblegum flavored Super Blue toothpaste now available at InfowarsStore.com in limited supply. Again, if you're not using fluoride free toothpaste by now, you're absolutely insane. Harvard studies, it reduces IQ, it causes bone cancer. It's not great, let's just put it that way. And I've been using it for about, what, 15 years now? So you're going to buy it anyway. Why not buy it from us? It's in limited supply, but it is available at InfowarsStore.com with the new bubblegum flavor Super Blue Fluoride Free Toothpaste, and it supports this network, which is under constant demonization and attack, because we don't take big fat checks from George Soros. We don't get put on extremist list even though they want us to. That's how they're taking away the YouTube money. That's why we need your support more than ever, because we're not funded by giant corporations who are now pulling the plug on YouTube as they move it into a TV thing, a Netflix model, to drown out independent voices. So support us by getting the products at InfowarsStore.com.